Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual summit, MSD Pledge 2.0, Empowering Organizations to Transform Workplace Safety. My name is Sarah Isher, and I'm the MSD Solutions Lab Program Lead. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. We have a fantastic speaker lineup this afternoon, as well as some exciting program updates to share. For those of you who are familiar with the National Safety Council MSD Solutions Lab, know by now that musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, aren't just one of the biggest safety challenges facing today's employees, they're also one of the biggest challenges to operating a successful business today's employers may face. In fact, MSDs are the second leading cause in shortening employers' working years, outranked only by mental illness and substance use. It goes without saying, launching any new safety initiative is an investment, but as business leaders and safety experts close to this issue know, unmanaged MSD risk can be even more costly. Each year, U.S. private businesses lose a total of $17 billion in lost wage and medical expenses, and it's well recognized these injuries and costs can impact organizations of all sizes and in any industry. It's for these reasons NSC, with funding and support from Amazon, has been so focused on addressing workplace MSDs through the groundbreaking MSD Solutions Lab these past couple of years. Our goal isn't just to sound the alarm on this omnipresent safety issue, but to challenge the long-held assumption that MSDs are just the inevitable cost of doing business. We must ignite meaningful action across the global business and safety community to solve them. In June 2022, we launched the inaugural MSD Pledge to help all employers, regardless of their size, industry, or the point at which they are on their safety journey, tackle this safety challenge through global collaboration and pioneering innovation. Our goal here was simple: creating safer outcomes for millions of workers worldwide by collectively reducing MSD risks and injuries by 25% by 2025. More than 170 of you have already joined us on this journey to transform workplace safety for the better, with more than 2.7 million employees across every major global continent now covered by the pledge. But safety is all about continuous improvement. We know that MSDs are cumulative injuries. What organizations do or don't do today to prevent them has the potential to impact their workforce, organizational culture, and bottom line tomorrow. So our mission to drastically reduce MSDs doesn't stop in 2025, and yours shouldn't either. Last month, continuing this commitment to reducing MSD risk worldwide, NSC proudly unveiled the next evolution of our industry first call to action, the MSD Pledge 2.0. Whereas the inaugural MSD Pledge, many of you signed, aims to collectively reduce workplace MSD risk and injuries by 25% by 2025, MSD Pledge 2.0 specifically focuses on addressing MSDs beyond. To do this, organizations that sign the new pledge, similar to the organizations that have already signed the inaugural MSD Pledge, will commit to the community's core goals of analyzing the causes of MSD injuries and investing in solutions and practices that reduce risks to workers, leveraging innovations and sharing learnings that improve safety practices, building a culture of safety where everyone at every level is accountable for the safety and health of workers. As a hallmark of the Pledge 2.0 program, MSD Pledge 2.0 members will also have the unique opportunity to identify their own MSD risk reduction goal over the next 5 years after signing. As I mentioned before, safety progress is a never-ending journey. We recognize every organization is at a different point in their quest to create safer outcomes for their employees, and that risk reduction is not a one-size-fits-all approach. NSC has a proven track record of convening an unparalleled network of safety leaders to address the most complex safety challenges of our time and tailoring safety solutions so all workers may benefit. The MSD Pledge 2.0 is yet another example of our shared commitment to safety progress. By increasing access to the lab's incredible network and resources through this new pledge initiative, we have the ability to create safer workplaces, healthier communities, and more equitable organizations so people can live their fullest lives both on and off the clock. And I'm pleased to share that 7 organizations, including Jacobs and ASSP, have now signed Pledge 2.0. So welcome. Whether you're a longtime member of our community or just getting started, we look forward to continuing working with all organizations in our MSD Pledge community to fuel safety progress through this new initiative. As we close out 2023 and look ahead to 2024, I encourage any organization committed to safety progress that has not yet signed the MSD Pledge to reaffirm its commitment to safety in the new year by joining NSC and more than 170 Charter Pledge members at the table in addressing workplace MSDs through this new initiative. In addition to accessing free resources to help reduce MSD risk, MSD Pledge 2.0 members will join MSD Pledge Charter members in participating in the MSD Solutions Index, an annual benchmarking survey designed to reflect against their 3 main pledge commitments: risk reduction, innovation and collaboration, and safety culture. With that, I want to switch gears to the rest of today's agenda and introduce today's speakers. In June, we shared some preliminary results from the inaugural MSD Solutions Index. The findings were eye-opening, but offered just a snapshot of the broader trends affecting MSD risk and prevention. So today, we're pleased to be joined by the lab's very own research manager, Dr. Paige DeBello, to take us through the full results and findings during the program's keynote and answer some questions following. We're also excited to present a panel of safety leaders to discuss their experiences and takeaways from their organization's participation in the MSD Solutions Index. Our panelists include Lisa Beach Hawley, Manager of the Health and Safety Program at Ontario Power Generation; Giovanni Galera, EVP Chief Clinical Services Officer at Concentra; and Isaac Green, Project Manager at Durable Surfaces. We'll conclude with some additional program updates and debut our newest resource. We welcome questions from the audience, and we will do our best to get to them during today's event or in a follow-up communication. If you have a question, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Now, I want to welcome Dr. Paige DeBello.
Thanks, Sarah, and hello, everyone. I am Dr. Paige DeBello, MSD Solutions Lab Research Manager. My background is in industrial organizational psychology, which at a high level means I use my previous training to focus on uncovering new ways that organizations can make their workplaces as safe, productive, and fulfilling as possible here at NSC. Whether you're a business leader or an HR professional tuning in to learn more about how to mitigate your organization's safety and operational risk, or if you're a seasoned EHS expert looking to take your company's MSD prevention efforts to the next level, there's one thing I think we can all agree on. Every employee has the right to work in an environment where their safety and health is valued. However, determining what next steps are needed to make this a reality is really easier said than done, especially when it comes to preventing MSDs. One of the biggest unique challenges of MSDs is their complexity. And this complexity can make mitigating MSDs in an organization much more complicated. As a result, organizations may see the most success in reducing MSDs by taking a multifaceted approach to MSD prevention. However, understanding all the pieces and parts of an organization that might impact MSD prevention might be hard to uncover. And so this is really where the MSD Solutions Index comes in. But before we take too deep of a jump into talking about the development and results from the index, we would like to take a second to acknowledge our funding for this project and thank Amazon for their philanthropic donation that helps to fund this research. So now just a bit of background on the index purpose and goals. Having a collective understanding of the tactics your organization uses to mitigate MSD risk is imperative. Therefore, the index was designed to measure MSD prevention at the organizational level, with the added benefit of being developed by a third party, NSC. The index is also designed to not only provide organizations with feedback about their risk reduction initiatives, but also to provide feedback on less focused on factors of MSD prevention and mitigation, such as workplace safety culture, levels of innovation and technology readiness, and other non-physical risk factors of MSDs that address psychosocial factors and mental well-being. The index also provides organizations that sign the MSD Pledge with personalized feedback on what they're doing well and areas of opportunity to strengthen their MSD prevention efforts. The MSD Solutions Index provides many benefits to pledgees as well, including the ability to benchmark or compare their results on the index with other companies. The index also allows organizations to track their own MSD prevention progress over time, since the survey is completed annually. And lastly, the index holds organizations accountable to their pledge commitments. We know that we could have just had organizations sign the pledge and continue on with how they typically conduct business. However, we hope that through the pledge and by taking the index, that workplaces will really take strides to improve their safety goals as they relate to MSDs. And now we'll do an overview of how the items on the index were sourced, written, reviewed, and finalized. So items within the index were aligned to the three main pledge commitments that Sarah introduced earlier of risk reduction, safety culture, and innovation and collaboration. Regarding how we actually generated these items, we used a handful of resources. We started by seeking sources of information on MSDs to inform our items. Those sources included current research on MSD prevention and current risk assessment tools, and input from internal and external experts, including the technical survey development expertise on our very own MSD Solutions Lab research team. We also went through a rigorous external review phase with our advisory council members, who are made up of MSD experts in industry and academia. And with their input, we landed on a total of 46 questions for the index. Within those 46 questions, there are 22 items addressing risk reduction, 17 discussing a culture of safety, and 7 on innovation and collaboration. And I provided some example questions here for you just to get a sense of the depth of the questions and how they might differ from one another. And while each organization's individual index results remain confidential, organizations do receive personalized reports about what they are doing well and areas of opportunity to strengthen their MSD prevention efforts. In those reports, participants receive an overall index result, as well as results for the 3 subsections of risk reduction, safety culture, and innovation and collaboration that fall into one of the 5 categories that you see here presented along the barometer on the screen. So those sections are innovating, proactive, advancing, reactive, and novice. Reports were designed with the idea that organizations could share them internally to raise awareness about their current MSD prevention efforts and to generate opportunities for collaboration and organization-wide involvement in MSD prevention improvements. We'll get to hear from our panel in a bit as well regarding how they've used their personalized feedback on the index within their own companies. And now moving into results from year 1 of the index. So 52 organizations responded to the index for the 2022-2023 cycle. Most index responses were completed by a senior level leader or a safety and health professional. The survey was completed by just 1 representative from the company, although we did encourage collaboration when completing the index. While organizations were able to take the MSD Pledge for just a department or sector of their organization, we found that 87% of index respondents were those who had taken the pledge on behalf of their entire organization. We also saw that a vast majority of those who completed the index were headquartered here in the United States, and over 3/4 of respondents had some form of an MSD prevention or ergonomics program in place already. And so moving on to kind of looking at the index findings overall, we can see kind of a snapshot of the community results there in the bottom right-hand corner. So you can see that 46% of index respondents received an overall score in the proactive category. So kind of that category right above the category of advancing, which is more in the average. 39% of companies were advancing toward their pledge goals there in the middle, and 15% of organizations earned an overall score in the reactive category. And I really want to emphasize here, looking at this graph, that we see no organization that completed the index earned a perfect score, or even a score in the top scoring category of innovating. This demonstrates that as a community, we have more to learn and do to keep workers safe, which is really encouraging. Additional findings highlighted here show positive and significant correlations between overall index results and other key variables. This means that as responses to the identified items increase, the overall index results increase as well. These correlations found were with the extent to which human factors are designed into work processes, the provision of ergonomic tools and equipment, the level of trust between workers and other levels of the organization, the level of frontline worker involvement in determining work features, and if leading indicators are tracked more than lagging indicators. However, some other interesting results uncovered that there were no significant relationships between overall index results and the industry an organization falls into, an organization size, or how long their MSD program has been established. This is also encouraging because it shows that organizations can do well on their MSD journey, even if they are a small company or if they're just starting out in their MSD prevention efforts. And so now diving into the results by subsections. So first we'll look at risk reduction, which contains items covering topics such as risk factors and current MSD prevention program features. As you can see in the graph here in the bottom right corner, the results of this section were almost perfectly normally distributed, meaning it has this nice bell curve that us researchers get really excited about, with most of the results falling under the advancing category. Analysis showed positive correlations between risk reduction subsection results and an organization size, and how long an MSD or ergonomics program had been established. So this is a little bit different than what we were seeing for the overall results that were not correlated to organization size and MSD program tenure. But here with the risk reduction results, we are seeing that. This does make a fair amount of sense, as risk reduction efforts are more likely to be developed and perfected over time. And also we expect that larger organizations might have more resources to devote to risk reduction, but something that we'll definitely be exploring in the future. Additionally, over 3/4 of respondents utilize employee feedback to determine where improvements are needed in their workplace. Also, we found that lagging indicators such as doing OSHA logs and workers' compensation claims are more commonly tracked than leading indicators such as employee trainings and early reporting. And also, in terms of the most commonly used MSD intervention types, when broken into these 3 categories of personal, organizational, and systems level interventions, 42% employ mostly personal level interventions such as PPE, while 46% most commonly utilize organizational level interventions such as workstation design, and only 4% were employing systems levels interventions such as automation and robotization. And since this item was focusing on the most commonly used intervention type, I think at least for now, this 4% in the systems level intervention category makes sense. But I at least personally am curious to see how this metric might change over time as tech and automation becomes more commonplace in organizations and in safety in general. And finally, 65% of respondents currently track MSDs in their workplace. We might have expected this number to be a bit higher since respondents have pledged to reduce MSD risk. But again, I think this demonstrates the room for advancement that's indicated in the distribution of this graph. Additionally, we pulled out findings from 2 items in the risk reduction subsection, which asked about the top risk factors and top body parts impacted by MSDs in the respondent's workplace. The top 5 risk factors seen in the community are awkward postures or excessive bending and twists, lifting or carrying, repetitive activities that are related to a computer, prolonged sitting and standing, and pushing and pulling. And the top 5 impacted body parts seen across the community are shoulder, low back, wrist, neck, and knee. And looking at these risks and the impacted body parts, these findings seem to accurately represent index respondents. The 2 industries most represented in the index were manufacturing and the professional, scientific, and technical services industry. And the risks and impacted body parts that we see here reflect common risks and impacted body parts from those industries. And so now we know that reducing MSDs is a more complex task that involves more than just training employees how to work safely or procuring new technology to meet this challenge. It's also critically important to listen to employees, which brings me to the discussion of the next index safety pillar, or the next index pillar, safety culture. The results here were a bit higher. As shown in the graph in the bottom right corner, the majority are falling into this proactive category, so kind of a step above that average category of advancing, showing more developed safety cultures across respondents. Analyses showed many correlations between safety culture results and other relevant variables. There were positive correlations found between the safety culture subsection results and results on the innovation and collaboration subsection, the extent to which human factors were designed into workplace processes, providing ergonomic tools and equipment to employees, the level of trust between workers and other levels of their organization, frontline worker involvement, and the use of employee perception surveys. So again, as one of these variables is increasing, for example, if an organization reports higher levels of worker involvement, we're seeing that their result on the safety culture subsection is likely to increase as well. And additionally, while many respondents indicated that they have open communication in their workplace, roughly 1/4 of respondents feel that their senior leadership does not communicate the importance of MSD prevention. And we know that leadership commitment and buy-in for MSD prevention is really important for MSD program and mitigation success. And so we'll plan to hear a bit more about this from our panel of experts coming up in a few minutes as well. And looking at some more results from this subsection, the bottom line is that organizations that regularly involve frontline workers in workplace decision-making have stronger safety cultures than those that do not engage their frontline workers as frequently, which underscores the importance of effective communication and trust in any workplace. And digging into these findings a bit more, we're seeing that nearly 2/3 of index respondents regularly conduct employee perception surveys, and nearly 90% of companies have methods in place for workers to share suggestions for safety improvements. Notably, the index also showed that when it comes to safety decisions related to workstation design, the physical working environment, and workflow, frontline workers were regularly consulted on these issues. However, we also found that 84% of organizations reported that non-physical risk factors contribute to MSDs in their workplace. These risk factors can include things like mental fatigue, a lack of training, a lack of personnel, and a lack of proper equipment or tools being provided. These topics may not be as widely discussed when it comes to MSD prevention, but are still critically important for safety leaders to bring up with employees across their organization. And switching gears, I want to talk about the last section of the MSD Solutions Index, innovation and collaboration. We know investing in technology to reduce MSDs is demonstrated to improve both worker well-being and an organization's bottom line, which is one of the lab's key focus areas over the past couple of years, has been to make it easier for companies to learn about and implement new safety technologies through programs like the annual Safety Innovation Challenge, the publishing of our most recent paper on emerging technologies for the prevention of musculoskeletal disorders, and much more. However, looking at our responses here on the last subsection of the index, results trended a bit lower, with the majority of responses falling into the reactive category, showing room for more development in this area across index respondents. In total, roughly 4 out of 5 companies who completed the index are currently involved with technology in their workplace to prevent MSDs. And just as many, roughly 83%, are effective at ensuring these best practices are broadcasted widely across their organization. However, one area of opportunity that persists when it comes to implementing proven solutions is ensuring that key learnings are also shared externally so that all workers can benefit, which is why forums like this are really important. While about half of respondents sharing externally is a great starting place, we at the lab hold that MSD prevention works best in a collaborative environment. This belief is the inspiration for the engage and amplify pillars of the MSD Solutions Lab, as well as the index overall. And so now that I've kind of gone over some of the findings by sections, I want to dive a little deeper into areas that we have identified as being well developed in the community, in addition to areas that could use more dedication and focus in the future. Starting off with areas of celebration in the risk reduction section, over half of respondents rated their workplace's ability to prevent MSDs as good or excellent. And while usually a self-report measure like this should be taken with a grain of salt, these self-ratings are supported by some correlations on the back end, which show that higher self-ratings did tend to correlate with higher scores on the overall index and safety culture subsection. So those self-ratings are backed up by stronger index scores. Furthermore, 42% of respondents reported having risk reduction goals in their workplace. As many of you know, having actionable goals or even SMART goals is one of the first steps to be taken in MSD prevention, and it's encouraging to see that a decent portion of the community is already focusing on this. And finally, we have seen that those who track more leading indicators as opposed to more lagging indicators receive significantly better results in all subsections. I think we can all agree that preventing injuries before they happen is better than reacting to those injuries after the fact. And so this finding is something we want to continue to track and support within the Pledge community. As for areas of celebration and safety culture, we saw that 65% of respondents currently conduct employee perception surveys. Additionally, a majority of respondents have methods in place for workers to share safety improvement suggestions. It can definitely be argued that no one knows the risk of a job better than the people who do it day in and day out. So employee feedback like this is very important in MSD prevention. Also, employee surveys, receptiveness to employee feedback, and the opportunity to address concerns are a great way to build a strong safety culture and a psychologically safe environment. And finally, for areas of celebration within innovation and collaboration, our main finding relates specifically to innovation, with 81% of respondents currently involved with MSD prevention tech in some way. And breaking that down a bit more specifically, we found that 37% are currently using a tech solution, 14% are testing or trialing one, and 31% are actively researching a technology to potentially implement in their workplace. As I mentioned, and as many of you certainly know, safety technology is a big topic in safety and health right now, and it's encouraging to see so many people in the community utilizing these innovative solutions, or at least showing interest in them. And in addition to areas of celebration, we have also identified opportunities for improvement. These are areas that the MSD Solutions Lab will be devoting more time and effort to better assist the community where most help is needed. For starters, 17% do not currently have an ergonomics or MSD prevention program in place. This is definitely an important first step in an organization's MSD prevention journey, and it's a clear area where we need to devote time and resources. And for anyone looking for a starting point on this front, we currently do have a resource on our website for developing MSD policies and procedures. Further, almost half of respondents do not have risk reduction goals in their workplace. And I know that I just mentioned that 42% who do have risk reduction goals was a celebration, but I think this finding is really two-pronged. We want to recognize that the goal set by the 42% and celebrate that, but we still need to acknowledge that goal setting needs to be a key focus moving forward if 48% of the community do not yet have MSD risk reduction goals. As I mentioned earlier, having those actionable goals is really one of the first steps to be taken in MSD prevention, and is an area that we want to offer more education and resources moving forward. And finally, a majority of respondents reported that they believe non-physical risk factors play an important role in the incidence of MSDs in their workplaces. However, of those who indicated that non-physical risk factors play a role, half of them could not quantify the impact of these factors, meaning that these factors were not actually measured in their organization. This finding, among other feedback and research, has contributed to the decision for the lab's next research paper to focus on these non-physical risk factors. And now, before we dive into a brief Q&A and then turn it over to our panel to discuss their organization's experiences and takeaways from the MSD Solutions Index, I want to share what's next for the index. So looking ahead, we are planning for longitudinal data collection, with the team already prepared to launch the index for the 2024 cycle on December 4th, so coming up just around the corner. We will continue to use findings to determine trends, which will in turn inform our future resources and efforts. We'll also continue to track progress toward reducing MSDs across the Pledge community. In the future, we will continue to create and distribute individual reports as organizations complete the index. We will also release annual reports summarizing key findings. And so for any of you who are interested in reading more about the findings I presented on today, keep your eye out for the first annual report, which is set to be released by the end of the year. And you can see the cover photo or the cover image of that report there on the right. And lastly, I really just want to thank everyone in our Pledge community for participating in the survey. While many organizations promote the value of safety, we know it takes courage for a company to submit itself to an independent review and apply those lessons learned. So on behalf of the National Safety Council, thank you for your support and participation and for your commitment to continuous safety improvement.
Paige, thank you for that comprehensive overview on findings from the MSD Solutions Index. Let's go ahead and dive into a few more questions about the index, and if we have time, we'd love to take some questions from the audience. So go ahead and use that Q&A tab. So with that, we'll start with the first question. What would you say was the biggest takeaway from the inaugural MSD Solutions Index?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know I just shared a lot today, but boiling it down, I think overall, one of the biggest takeaways is that the Pledge community members who completed the index are excelling most in their safety cultures, but are excelling a little bit less in areas of risk reduction and innovation and collaboration efforts, which really helps us as a lab to know where to focus our efforts moving forward. Also, higher overall index results and higher results on each of the three subsections we're seeing in organizations that more commonly track those leading indicators as opposed to lagging indicators. And the connection between this measurement of leading indicators and more success on the index overall, I think is really interesting to uncover just in year one. And I think highlights that measuring those leading indicators can have a powerful impact on MSD prevention. So something I'll be curious to see if we see that trend again in year two.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. And we did have an audience Q&A. You were just talking about leading indicators. So Mario was wondering, what kind of leading indicators can be tracked in relation to MSD ergonomics, or what were some of those that you asked about in the index?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had a big laundry list of possible leading indicators, but a couple that stand out to me are asking about employee perception surveys, if you have leadership involvement and kind of engagement in your MSD prevention programs, if you have trainings available, if you're really responding to the number of jobs that you have worked to eliminate some of the MSD risks from. And so we can follow up to and kind of provide you with that whole list of leading indicators that we were tracking within the index, if that might be a helpful place to start if you're looking to track those leading indicators yourself.
Thanks. And on to the next question. Paige, what do you think is the biggest area of opportunity for organizations based on these results?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we really saw from the results that I just shared the areas of opportunity in the risk reduction and innovation and collaboration sections of the index. More specifically and kind of more nuanced within the risk reduction results section, we noticed that a lot of organizations reported not using standardized risk assessments or tools or other measurement devices, and instead commonly use things that they've developed in-house themselves, which I understand the utility of making something in-house that it really matches with your program and your needs. But there also might be some utility in kind of helping folks understand the power of using a standardized assessment and why that might be good moving forward. So again, I'll be curious to see if we see that trend persist into year two of the index.
Yeah, and just thinking about the results, was there anything that surprised you after analyzing the responses?
Yeah, I was impressed by the amount of frontline worker involvement that we saw among organizations who completed the index. That item was embedded within the safety culture subsection, and I think the positive findings that we were seeing on that item really contributed to that overall safety culture subsection success across the Pledge community. We saw that the vast majority of folks have methods in place for workers to provide feedback. And also lots of organizations mentioned that they implement employee feedback surveys. And so we know that those feedback surveys and just other avenues to get employee feedback is really useful for organizations holistically, but especially as it relates to MSD mitigation and understanding more of some of those psychosocial risk factors that might be present in an organization. I think teasing those out through feedback surveys or other feedback mechanisms can be really important. So I don't know if that was surprising, but I was at least impressed by the pledge community's maturity in that section. So.
Thanks. And we did have another audience Q&A from Alan. Can you share some of the successful risk reduction goals or maybe some of the things that our pledgees are tracking that have been met?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when it comes to goals, I think it really depends on where you are in your safety maturity journey. So I think a goal for a company could be having an MSD Solutions champion, or maybe it's just implementing your program. I think we did see some folks have their own metric, like a % reduction goal, and that I think can be really powerful. But I think matching the goal to what makes sense for your organization is what we're seeing as really important. And we know with MSD Pledge 2.0 and the ability to kind of goal set yourself, that's going to be kind of a focus area moving forward. And it's something that we at the lab and within the research team recognize that there might be a need for some coaching around goal setting within the MSD reduction world. So that is something that could be coming up.
Yeah, and just a last question. Were there any notable trends among organizations in regard to their index responses?
Yeah, we did find some trends related to organization size that I can speak to. So interestingly, we found that smaller and medium-sized organizations were likely to have initiated their MSD prevention programs within the past 5 years, so more recently, whereas the larger organizations have had their programs in place for a decade or more, which maybe seems obvious, but I think was kind of interesting to see that play out in the data. And also still thinking about organization size, we also saw that larger organizations were more likely to administer employee perception surveys. But we saw that larger organizations had lower levels of trust and lower levels of reported frontline worker involvement. So I think that kind of juxtaposition of having the more opportunity for employee feedback, but then the lower levels of trust and involvement is interesting. And again, it's something I'll be curious to see how that plays out in the 2023-2024 index.
And it looks like we did just have one more question come in since you discussed employee perception surveys. Adam was wondering, does this have to be completely around MSD reduction, or would just a general safety perception survey be considered a positive response?
That's a great question. We did not specify, at least for the index item, that it needs to be safety specific. I think you can tease out a lot of those psychosocial risk factors for MSDs within kind of a more generic employee perception survey. So asking about, your interactions with your supervisor or your levels of job satisfaction, if the aspects of your job are really clear to you and you know what your duties are. So this was looking more kind of holistically at a general employee perception survey. I think if folks have safety perception surveys, like by all means that's awesome, but I think we were just considering a more general employee perception survey.
Great. Paige, thank you again for the enlightening conversation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to introduce our panel for our next portion of the program.
Awesome. And thank you, Sarah. And I'm pleased to welcome our esteemed panel of speakers. And so again, we have with us today, Lisa Beach-Hawley, Health and Safety Program Manager in Corporate Environment, Health and Safety at Ontario Power Generation. Lisa has been the corporate lead for ergonomics and MSD prevention at OPG for many years, overseeing annual strategic action plans, developing ergonomics training and resources, launching innovations in MSD prevention, and much more. And we're also joined by Giovanni Gallara, Executive Vice President and Chief Clinical Services Officer at Concentra. Giovanni leads all clinical aspects of Concentra's physical rehabilitation program and supports the Concentra Advanced Specialty Physician Program, ancillary services, peer review services, managed pharmacy, and referrals management teams. So welcome, Giovanni. And finally, we are joined by Isaac Green, Project Manager at Durable Surfaces. Isaac has many years of experience and knowledge in the industry from his time serving in several different roles, including laborer, foreman, shop manager, training manager, and safety manager. And so Lisa, Giovanni, and Isaac, thank you for joining us. And so I'll go ahead and just start it off. So Isaac, we have a first question for you. As someone who has experienced an MSD injury, can you share your personal insights on how MSDs affect job performance and job satisfaction? And also, how does a supportive environment focused on MSD solutions make a difference in a worker's ability to excel on the job?
Sure. I mean, just to base it off of my own personal experience, it drastically affects job performance and job satisfaction negatively. First, starting out as a laborer working on the field, I'd say that, you could consider us a construction company of sorts. So a lot of hard labor stuff that we're doing, and being able to pool, 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week, things like that, doing hard labor stuff. It was fine when we started, or when I started working here. And then, over time, it just starts to affect you very negatively. You start to feel it in your back, in your knees, your joints. And job performance drastically decreases. My output for what I was able to do in a day, and running crews, even watching my guys, their output just greatly reduced with longer shifts, and depending on what kind of work that we were doing. With lower output and more pain and things like that at work, the satisfaction also goes down quite a bit. I mean, I remember getting out of bed in the morning, and if you get out of your bed and your back hurts and you haven't even made it into work yet, you're certainly not satisfied with your job. You tend to get a little bit irritated coming into work. People ask you to do more things, and it can get pretty frustrating. And then it starts to affect you at home. I'm a father of two. I've got a little daughter that I love to pick up. When you have a hard time picking her up, and that you got to go to work the next day, and break your back when you can't even pick up your daughter, that can seriously affect how you're feeling about job satisfaction, and can seriously affect job performance. As far as having a supportive environment, and how that can make a difference, over the years, I've been here 10 years, and over the years, having regular conversations with my management staff, a lot of the language has always been, what can we do to get guys up off their backs? What can we do to improve the environment, so guys don't have to, they can rely on equipment, they can rely on machines, rather than relying on their own human body to do this hard physical labor. And just receiving the support from them, and knowing that they're having those conversations, and knowing that they're looking for ways to improve, even just knowing that is extremely helpful. So even just them communicating that to us as staff members makes us feel a lot better. It makes us feel supported. It makes us, see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. So having a supportive environment focused on MSDs makes a huge difference, I'd say, in job performance and really satisfaction.
Yeah, thanks so much, Isaac, for sharing your personal experience, and also showing how it can impact not just your work life, but your personal life too. I think is really important when it comes to MSDs. Even if they're sustained at work, it can bleed over into your personal life. And I also appreciate you commenting on your leadership's communication and investment in MSD prevention, and how that kind of helps to overall create a more supportive work environment. So thanks for sharing. And Giovanni, over to you. So since signing the MSD Pledge, Concentra has made tremendous strides in enhancing a culture of reporting. Can you talk about how your organization used the MSD Solutions Index report to shape your new initiatives and safety goals? And maybe tell us what types of outcomes you achieved so far.
Sure. I'll provide a little bit of background. Concentra is an urgent care practice where we focus primarily with occupational medicine. So when you think about some of our counterparts here, we are a healthcare organization, so we're not in heavy industry, we're not in manufacturing, but still MSDs does play a role in challenges that some of our colleagues have. So we have 540 locations across the country, and we also deliver care on 150 employer sites. So we have 11,000 employees. So you can imagine kind of the diversity of the responsibilities that our colleagues have, anywhere from frontline patient care to we have a real estate component. We also have billing. So there's a lot of diversity. And one of the challenges that we had you had mentioned this in the index, is a lot of times organizations will take a look at their workers' compensation claims and start working backwards from a way of tackling some of their challenges. And what we had implemented really was leveraging a third-party system to start to track colleague incident reports when there were some injuries. Whether they ended up with a recordable or work loss time, it really didn't matter. But what we were trying to do is really to better inventory the type of incidents that were coming out of our colleagues' daily responsibilities. And with that, we were able to start to collect data and gather some categories and really start to develop some specific plans to address some of the things that we teased out in some of the incident reports. One of the areas that we did notice was throughout the course of our care is our colleagues actually help support when patients come in and they do pre-employment testing. A lot of times what we'll do in that component is we actually bring our patients through work simulated programs to make sure that they can pass some of the essential job functions before they move on to a full hire. And what we were noticing was our colleagues were actually getting injured during that support of those patients going through the pre-employment screenings. So really what we did is we started to address that specific task and that colleague responsibility through extensive training through ergonomics and body mechanics. And we implemented that training for anybody going into that role. And what we were able to see based on implementing the incident reporting, the training, we actually saw a 50% reduction in manual material and patient handling injury volumes year over year. So that was a really nice specific example of how that incident reporting really helped us guide, put the appropriate resources to make an impact to the colleagues.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing. I think it's so interesting to just see that kind of isolating on that one, job task and one job function could really make that big of a difference overall. So super impressive to hear that. And Lisa, switching over to you. So at Ontario Power Generation, you shared with us a really innovative peer coaching model in your body mechanics training program. Could you elaborate on this model for our audience a little bit more? And how can businesses think about mobilizing peer champions to reduce risks and build a stronger culture of safety?
Thank you so much for having me, Paige. I'm really excited to share some of OPG's experiences in our MSD prevention journey. So I'll start with saying that the foundation of peer coaching at OPG is in what we call our I Care safety culture. So we promote the value that workers make the safe choice in every situation because they care about themselves and care about going home safely to their families and others that they care about and their co-workers. So OPG actually has quite a formalized peer-to-peer coaching program in some of our stations, and we label it I Care to Coach. And we provide training through a video on how to coach and how to receive coaching. And we actually have kiosks where people can record coaching that they've received or given. And these things are tracked in a database, and we call it our observation and coaching database, so that there's sort of some tracking going on about what things people are being coached on and where good behaviors are going on, where things need some improvement and that kind of thing. So this type of culture about peer coaching is quite well established. But specifically on the MSD prevention front, we started piloting a program a couple of years ago to train frontline workers who do physically demanding jobs in strong body mechanics principles to teach them how to move safely and protect their muscles and joints in any activity they do, whether at work or outside of work. This program includes both a micro-learning approach, so there's short video lessons every other week, as well as this champion component where certain members of the team or supervisors receive extra training so that they can coach their teams and coworkers in these safe movement techniques, and how to move and exert forces safely in the specific tasks that they're talking about doing on any given day. So it's been really exciting to see frontline workers grab onto this program and become passionate about the importance of preventing pains, strains, and wear and tear, and seeing them speak up in a friendly, caring way to their coworkers while they're working. So whether it's supervisors concerned about their team members or individual workers who for various reasons have a passion for safety or MSD prevention. Some people have had injuries of their own and they want to share that experience and prevent that from happening to others, or they may be involved in sports and have had injuries in that way and understand the how we need our musculoskeletal system and everything we do. Stepping up for this champion role gives them a way to help their teams, as well as an opportunity for them to develop leadership skills. And it's something they can include in their sort of performance planning and evaluation for the year. So there's personal development, professional development, and contributing to the culture in the workplace. So some of the teams in the program, they dedicate a specific time each week to review the video and practice the techniques and talk about how they see that applying to the things that they do. And we've heard where the teams really have fun with it and joke around, tease each other, that kind of thing. It's really key to the engagement with it and retention of the learning. Some of the employees have told me stories that really illustrate the impact of the program. For example, somebody was telling me about how they were doing a backyard project and they felt a little tweak in their back and recognized that they weren't using the safe movement techniques they'd been taught at work. So they started doing that and then were able to finish the work feeling strong and without pain or discomfort. Another employee I bumped into when I asked how the program was going, she just got all excited and raved about it and said, we need to be teaching this in schools. So it's great to see that when frontline workers are engaged and involved in talking about it together like this, it really sinks in and becomes something that they feel strong about. So I'd say that for companies thinking about initiating some kind of peer coaching program, we do need to give people the skills in how to coach and receive coaching in a positive way. So that people don't get defensive and it doesn't come across as, how I caught you doing something wrong and things like that. We need to recognize or reward people for doing that and then continuously reinforce this as part of the safety culture of the organization.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. I think it sounds like you created a system there that employees are super engaged with, which I know we're always talking about wanting to get that employee engagement, but sometimes it can be hard to create an environment that they want to engage with. And it's really impressive to hear that it sounds like at OPG, you guys have created an environment that they're really eager to join into. So that's awesome. And let's switch around. So Isaac, we know that Durable Surfaces has already undertaken a comprehensive approach to mitigate MSDs by incorporating a multitude of facets into your preventative measures while meticulously monitoring other various indicators in the realm of MSD prevention. So could you speak to how the MSD Solutions Index report shed light on opportunities for refining both the tracking of MSD indicators and the enhancement of the company's MSD prevention strategies?
Sure. If I could also just, I loved a lot of the stuff that Lisa said, just about employee engagement and things like that, and making it fun and making it relatable. I think that is an extensive amount of the battle. I've been able to overcome a lot of stuff with my guys just by simply relating to them on a personal level and saying like, yeah, guys, listen, I get it. I've been there. I've done this work. I know how it feels. I've gone home with some pain in my knees and my back, and like I know exactly how you guys are feeling, and being able to just have that conversation with them and relate with them on that personal level, and then have some fun with it, and brings more awareness to it and has them thinking about it more often. I just think that's something that's great that Lisa pointed out. So as far as Durable and getting involved with the index and the pledge, when this pledge came around, it was something that I came across while I was a safety manager, and I thought it was a no-brainer for us because we've been working on the ground for forever. We've been implementing strategies for a long time now. We already have a bunch of things in place. And so I thought, oh, here's a nice little bonus for us to be able to sign this thing and get some feedback, see what other companies are doing, get some data, extra data points to be able to look at and reference, and gain some resources from NSC. After taking the index and looking at the report, I wouldn't say that I was shocked necessarily, but it came back and I was like, man, You know, I jumped into this thinking we were fantastic and we have work to do, which is the nature of it. You know, that's how this stuff is. It's, you know, if safety was something that you could finish doing, then we'd all be perfectly safe all the time, and you know, a lot of us wouldn't have a job. So I think that you know, I think when the results came back, one of the biggest things that we saw that was eye-opening and very helpful for us, so that way we knew where to approach it and what to attack in our MSD prevention future. It wasn't necessarily with you know, strategies as far as equipment and things like that. We have so much of that already in place, whether it's stand-up grinding techniques and you know, lift gates on all of our trucks to lift heavy equipment, so that way guys don't have to. You know, lots of stuff that we've already implemented. Where we saw that we were lacking the most was honestly that level of engagement at the employee level, which is so interesting to get that back, because, you know, I have an executive staff that has the conversation. I have a labor force who has the conversation, but they're missing that bridge. And so to get that feedback and to know that's going on, you know, myself and the other employees and the executive staff are able to take that feedback and be like, oh, well, maybe this is a conversation we should have more often. You know, when we're out in the field checking on the guys, when we're seeing them on safety stand down days, or when we're seeing them at events or things like that, we're making sure that we're having these conversations with them to encourage that awareness, and hope that, you know, on the next index, it comes back a lot more positive. Just, yeah, raising awareness and having that interaction with them regularly, I think is, you know, it's something that we didn't realize we were missing out on as much as, you know, as much as the index said that we were. So I thought it was very helpful. Since getting the index back, a couple of things that we have done, just minor things. We've released a couple of different MSD safety rewards programs, just tiny little applications that you can download on your phone, tiny little MSD games that guys can play on their phone. You know, encouraging guys to do that, just putting it in front of them, basically. What that does is it just gets them thinking about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be, all right, everybody every single day has to do, you know, this many stretches, this many ways, or whatever. Just regularly getting it to be in front of them, I've found is the most successful way to get these people to be thinking about something when they're picking it up. Just have that message in front of them all the time. So putting these rewards programs in place, having guys play these little games, and then, you know, whoever the winner of the game is, we set up a rewards program, gave them gift cards, handed out a bunch of different, you know, I think we handed out a flat screen TV at one point. It was great. The guys loved it. We got positive feedback from that. But yeah, relating to guys on a personal level, really connecting on that human level with those guys. So I love what Lisa said, just making it fun, making it interactive, and really collaborating with your team is how you get to the next level of MSD prevention, I'd say. It seems like such a simple thing. You know, most people think you got to get a robot to do, you know, robot strapped to your back and be able to lift things for you. That's not necessarily just what you need to do. And, you know, it's not crazy expensive either. I mean, yeah, flat screen TV's kind of expensive, but I mean, we're one of the smaller companies who signed this pledge, I think. And I mean, my executives are investing. I don't know. I haven't hit a cap yet for how much money I'm allowed to spend on making sure that my guys, you know, MSDs are prevented. So, you know, I think it's something that's absolutely achievable. And then again, like I said, it doesn't have to be crazy expensive. Just connecting with people. All that costs is, you know, some of your time, which I think is worth it.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac, for that response. I think, for one, I'm just so impressed with how it sounds like Durable Services has taken their index report and really made some actionable steps based on it. So whether it's, you know, refining some of that communication between different levels of your employees, or making sure that you're getting, you know, your frontline workers more engaged and knowing what MSD prevention is all about and why it's important, I think really, really impressive. And thank you for sharing so much. I think you also mentioned a lot of things that I hope that people who are listening can cling to some of that as well, and recognize that the approach to MSD prevention doesn't always have to be flashy in tech. Maybe sometimes it is, and those things are necessary, but there's other aspects, you know, embedded within safety culture that are really important to adhere to as well. So thanks for that. And so Giovanni, let's come back to you. So we know that Concentra has made some significant improvements to its training program, especially for new hires. Why is training so important for new employees? And what are some of the most effective strategies that companies can begin to implement from day one?
Yeah, so, a couple areas, obviously people are aware during the pandemic, the challenge with retaining clinicians and keeping clinicians obviously was a major challenge. But we've also noticed not only from our customers, but other resources out there like Bureau of Labor Statistics and other resources that injuries tend to occur most highly in the first year of employment, and oftentimes at the highest in the first 90 days of new employment. The other caveat too is, which is interesting, is if an individual, even though they may be tenured with an organization, when they change jobs, that increase in injury incidents also bumps up again. So you may have an employee that may have been with you for 5 or 6 years, but now they got a materially different job. That first 90 days, actually, they still have a higher incident rate for injuries, even though potentially they've been employed with you for a handful of years. So what we took a look at is kind of using some of the evidence that we got from the incident reporting. We took a look at, the opportunity to really improve colleague engagement, and we implemented a really robust new hire learning program for all our support colleagues, our therapists, and our medical clinicians. So what that did is really address a couple different things. It really gave them kind of the training and scope from what they had to do for their job responsibilities. But it also, I think, led, because it's mentor driven as well. So there's the colleague and their mentor that actually goes through the training program. So it really builds that relationship early on between the individual employee and their manager, which is really pivotal from an engagement standpoint and also a retention standpoint. And we wanted to make sure that folks were really well educated with their job responsibilities. And we also used some feedback from the incident reports to ensure that some of the safety components that we've identified in certain job titles were also incorporated in their new hire onboarding. In instances where we had people get promoted or move on to new jobs, they were actually re-implemented in the new hire learning program for that other category as well. So we were able to kind of continuously use this new hire learning program, to generate the engagement that we need from a new employee, B, establish the manager relationship, and C, identify any of the safety issues we've identified in the incident reporting. So we've had some really good success. Our retention from our colleagues' standpoint has been significantly better. We're getting feedback and we're constantly reviewing that and making sure that that's part of our annual review process to make sure that there's any enhancements or any knowledge that we get from the incident reporting that's being incorporated into the new hire learning and training program. So a lot of the things that Lisa and Isaac talked about as far as colleague engagement, manager support, organizational resources around some of those trainings have really paid off for us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think something that can feel so singular, like new hire orientation, can oftentimes maybe get overlooked. And I think recognizing how important it is for MSD prevention is a great step toward mitigating.
And some of these trainings, I mean, they could take up to 6 weeks to complete. So it's not a one and done. And then we have annual refreshes as well. So there's definitely a time commitment for the new colleague coming on board, but also a time commitment for their leader or their mentor. And it's a great way for us to also develop future leaders, because we can sometimes create peer mentors to help people guide through the onboarding process and training process. So it's been a really great way to engage new colleagues, but also develop and kind of foster the next generation of leaders that we have in the organization. So it's been quite successful so far.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great system. And let's see. So Lisa, let's come back over to you. So even industry leaders in health and safety have opportunities to involve in their safety journeys. So could you share some opportunities that you've identified through the MSD Solutions Index to tackle MSD risk holistically across OPG?
Yeah, absolutely. So OPG's actually got a strong history of ergonomics and MSD prevention going back to the 1980s or earlier. But even in my career here, we undertook a focused multi-year strategy between 2008 and 2012, based on at the time, it was the new MSD prevention guideline for Ontario. And actually, many of the elements of that guideline align with the recommendations in the MSD Index. So a lot of these things are tried and true and really important in making these programs work. So we did achieve really good success in reducing MSD injuries from about 40% of all of our injuries to around 23%, specifically as a result of that segment of years where we had a different sort of building on each other approach over the program. But then over time, other safety hazards moved up the priority list. So MSD prevention kind of coasted for a while, and we've more recently decided that we really need to reinvigorate and update our approach to MSD prevention. So signing the MSD Pledge has been a significant action in that direction. And like Isaac said, we were a little bit surprised by the rating that we received from the MSD Index. We were rated as advancing, as we've been considered a leader in this area, but it is very, very valuable to have this outside assessment to keep us from being complacent and to point out where we need to focus our efforts to make impactful improvements. And I will say that for companies who haven't done this before, we were quite amazed at the sophisticated analysis of our survey responses and the way that the opportunities and recommendations were formulated in the report. Like, so helpful to us, and really a tremendous amount of work, I'm sure, on your part. So for one thing, it was very interesting to see the emphasis on mental health and well-being and psychosocial factors and organizational factors. So our company does have quite an advanced, what we call a total health program, kind of being led by our health services department, but our MSD prevention program is in our environment, health and safety department. And we really haven't leveraged the connection between those two programs and messaging that well. So there's a big opportunity that's been pointed out to us that we'd love to jump on. Also, senior leadership commitment and support. It is there, but maybe not necessarily visible to the majority of frontline workers and supervisors, and that's something we could definitely improve on. And the recommendations of indicators to track were really helpful because we struggle to demonstrate impacts of our MSD prevention efforts through the traditional safety metrics. Fortunately, we don't have a large number of medically treated and lost time injuries. And so any changes in those, you really can't attribute to any one program. So our organization is moving more and more to leading metrics and indicators. So some of the things recommended in the MSD Index report will be really helpful to us. Some of it will be a bit of a challenge to capture that data, but definitely gives us some good ideas to work on. And one more thing was the recommendation to improve diverse worker involvement and input in MSD prevention. And as Isaac keeps saying, we know that the people doing the work, you know, they know the best what the problems are and have ideas for how it could be made better and safer. So we need to make sure they're being given the opportunity and the encouragement to speak up about concerns and contribute their ideas. And this is important beyond MSD prevention. So it's part of the culture we want to really build on.
Yeah, wow, Lisa, thanks for sharing. I think it seems really clear to me that OPG has really utilized their index report to its fullest. And being on the research team and generating those, that makes my heart warm. So thank you for utilizing that. I think we want it to be such an impactful report that can be shared and kind of collaborated on, and you know, not just something that you look at once and then you set down, but something that you really keep coming back to determine how you can make improvements. And it's, you know, part of the reason I think it's important for this to be an annual survey too. I think we hope at least that for pledgees, you know, taking the index again in 23-24 and then getting that index report can be insightful to see where kind of those improvements have been made. So thank you so much for sharing all that. And Giovanni, back over to you. We know that Concentra is kind of unique in that Concentra addresses both both MSD solutions, not only for your workforce, but also for your clients, many of whom are also small businesses. So maybe shed some light on why small businesses could maybe consider signing the MSD Pledge.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, obviously we're firm believers that regardless of the size of the employer, that, MSD should really be addressed. But, if we paint a picture, let's say you're an employer and you have 10 employees and you have one worker injured and they have to, and the injury is severe enough where they're out of work. I mean, that's a 10% impact to their total workforce. So these small businesses really are impacted pretty tremendously when they have workers that are either injured at work or have to go off duty because of the MSD injury. So the scope or the impact to an injured worker to a small business has a lot more impact than potentially an employer with 1,000 employees. So that's one area. A lot of the things that Lisa, Isaac, myself talked about too is, a small business with a history of a strong safety program really differentiates themselves when you think about bringing in a new worker. So if I'm a worker right now in a very tight labor force, where unemployment's less than 5%, and there's a choice between an employer, same size, relatively same pay, and one has a notorious history of bad safety record, and a choice between, another employer with a strong safety record, proactivity, it's part of their onboarding or part of their even interviewing process. That could be a real differentiator from attracting talent and retaining talent. A lot of it's, another component is really economics too. Your work comp insurance costs are based on payroll and then also your incident rates as well. So if you think about the economics, it's like our car insurance, right? If you're out there and getting in accidents every week, your car insurance is going to be significantly higher. Workers' compensation is very similar to that. So if you have a high incident rates of injuries, lost time work, that's a big economic impact to the cost of your workers' compensation coverage. In those small businesses that do have participation with like RFPs or public entities, a lot of times part of the contract submissions, you have to supply some safety records as well. And that could actually potentially keep you from winning new business if you have some challenges with safety records, specifically if you work in public entities and things like that, where you're doing government contracts or potentially municipal contracts. So, in summary, there's an economic component to it, higher cost for insurance. There could be loss in future business because of some safety challenges and not winning contracts. But I think the most important thing is really that retaining talent, keeping talent, and really setting yourself apart from potentially other employers that are out there. We know skilled craftsmen, skilled tradespeople it's very difficult to find. So when you think about setting yourself up from a differentiation perspective, the safety component can really make a big impact. Particularly for some of the things that Isaac said, we don't have just a work back or a work knee or a work shoulder. We take those home every day. And, we have employers that are focused on, preserving musculoskeletal health. That could play a long-term role in keeping these workers with you over longevity and, potentially their entire career. So those are just, some key points that we've discussed with our customers and some of the feedback that we've gotten from customers that are really focused on making sure that the musculoskeletal health is kind of key with particularly with some of these heavy labor industries.
Yeah, thanks for that, Giovanni. I think the safety as a differentiator between maybe employer A and employer B, I think is really important. And sometimes it can just be that emphasis on taking care of your employees and keeping them safe and having a good history of doing such between, retaining and getting new talent. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And just kind of a last question for us here, and opening it up to everybody. But so Durable Surfaces, Concentra, OPG, you guys have all successfully obtained leadership support by signing the MSD Pledge. For those other organizations maybe looking to get that leadership buy-in, what tips could you offer to make a persuasive case to sign the pledge? And maybe any examples that you have on how your safety teams have collaborated with those leaders. And feel free to just go around, Giovanni. I saw you come off mute, so go ahead if you'd like.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we talked about just in the MSD group is, it's sometimes you really have to approach this from a couple different ways, and sometimes approaching it from a business perspective sometimes gets executive team members more engaged to understand what the impact is from, potentially an employment standpoint, cost savings, productivity standpoint. So, as a clinician myself, I'm always thinking about worker readiness and worker health. Sometimes you have to broaden your perspective a little bit more in making sure that decision makers at the organization truly understand that worker safety has so many implications to your business. Like I said, retaining the right people, attracting the right people, reducing your costs, winning more business, being more successful. They're not in isolation when you start to address some of the worker readiness and worker health, and really painting that picture and understanding that there are going to be resources associated with it, and making sure that there's a budget process and there's, ways to actually save allocations to actually support these and not have these theoretical but actionable. And whatever data that you can start to identify and really create an objective case and really start tackling those, so you gain some early wins and some early momentum. That just builds on the program and something you can develop over time. So that's kind of been our approach, and that's been a lot of times our approach with some of the customers that we serve is, really what's your biggest pain point? How can we support your business? Most importantly, how can we support the people that are responsible for making your business successful? And how can we create some small wins, gain some momentum, and start to build off that? So those are just some of the key comments that I've witnessed, observed, and supported internally in my organization, but also with customers that we work with.
Go ahead, Isaac. Yeah.
Sorry. I think Giovanni's made a ton of great points. I feel like usually when the conversation about, how do you get leadership buy-in when it comes to MSDs, reducing MSDs, improving safety culture, 9 times out of 10, most people are going to tell you it's just put dollar amounts in front of them. Giovanni mentioned a lot the workman's comp and insurance rates and things like that, and he's absolutely right when it comes to a lot of that stuff that does get management's attention. Also, I would just say the world is moving towards safety, not away from it as far as operations. We're seeing on more and more just job sites in construction where you don't even get a chance to bid a project unless you have a high enough safety rating. I mean, it comes down to whether you get to work or whether you don't. And if you don't get to work, you lose business and then you go under. So, that's a strong message that I think comes across to executive management. They see that, and they hear that, and they're like, okay, well, here we go, we're going to do it. Durable surfaces thankfully has the benefit. A lot of the key decision makers have, I mean, myself included, multiple, our estimating staff, our guys who run our New Jersey office, who run our Harrisburg office, our multiple different locations. A lot of these guys have hands-on experience of actually doing this work. So when we receive feedback from the field or we see things out in the field, we know they comes down to it, they just know how it feels. So they're able to relate to that, and management, the decision makers, they're able to come back and they're able to say, well, we know exactly how this feels and we don't want anybody to have to feel that way. So I mean, I think I've said it till I'm red in the face. I don't think I need to say it too much more, but relating to your workers, it makes that much of a difference. It does. And it's not, you can bring that financial thing in front of your executive staff, your executive leadership, but relating to your workers is how you can get that number down quite a bit, and relying on people like Giovanni and people like Lisa to be able to support you, with their businesses and their knowledge. And we use Concentra, and Concentra is great. They've been great. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would say absolutely 100% speak their language, follow the money. But I'd also say the organizations usually set sort of their objectives, their vision, their mission, speak their language, use the words like, for example, at OPG, we have a big priority on social license, on innovation, collaboration. We really value external benchmarking. We're a continuous learning organization. We're trying to always keep an eye on what's going on in terms of best practices in the industry. So those were some of the concepts that I used to sell signing the MSD Pledge to our senior leaders. A lot of those things relate, and it makes a good statement to our employees as well as externally for OPG to sign on to the pledge and demonstrate visibly that we're committed to safety and in this particular area. So yes, I totally agree about the business benefits, but also there's the culture, the reputation of the company, the vision and mission of the company that you can link yourself to as well.
Yeah, thanks to you all for sharing. I think super helpful information that you guys have shared just throughout this panel today. So I know we heard a lot about, the importance of getting your employees engaged, and we heard a lot of great things about training from Giovanni and your coaching model at OPG, Lisa. Really some great kind of holistic, perspectives on how you guys have used your index reports, which I think is really valuable for this community to hear today. Also talking that, safety is really the future state. I think you mentioned that, Isaac, like people are moving towards safety. I think that's really powerful takeaway from a lot of this too. And just that, the need for leadership buy-in, that as we are moving towards safety as a big focus of the future within business, how can we make sure that leadership is on board with that and kind of in front of the curve and not trying to catch up later. So really, really great panel today. And just again, thank you, Lisa, Giovanni, and Isaac for a really robust discussion. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah to share a bit more about what's to come for the MSD Solutions Lab.
Thank you so much to each of you, to our panel participants for the insightful discussion, and to Paige for today's informative keynote. By now, you've heard preventing MSDs before they occur should be a core focus for every industry and every manager. While MSDs may be an issue as old as labor itself, we're proud to be joined by this vast safety and business community to ensure that they're not the top workplace safety challenge of tomorrow. In recognition of this community's work, I'm proud to share that NSC will be debuting a new component of the MSD Pledge, the MSD Pledge Badge, which is a token of distinction that recognizes these organizations as a best-in-class employer for their continued commitment to reduce the most common workplace injury, musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, and help workers lead healthier, fuller, MSD-free lives. The MSD Pledge Badge will specifically be awarded to charter members, or the organizations that joined the Pledge community from June 2022 through September 2023. Organizations that join the community by signing Pledge 2.0 will also be recognized, earning a designated MSD Pledge 2.0 badge to display across their workplace channels. We will be sharing the badges and toolkits to help you promote and display this distinction shortly. Before we close out today's program, I want to say a few more words about what's ahead for the MSD Solutions Lab. In the next few months, we are looking forward to publishing the lab's third white paper focused on evaluating the correlation between DE&I and MSDs, and addressing key safety culture concerns today's employers may have, such as how organizational policies and structures maybe disproportionately impact certain workers. We're also continuing to advance pioneering research and innovation through our Research to Solutions and MSD Solutions pilot grant programs. Next month, we'll receive initial reports from our inaugural grant awardees, and then early next year, we'll be announcing the continuation of the grant programs. Additionally, in 2024, we're aiming to release another white paper to help employers manage many of the non-physical MSD risk factors that Paige mentioned earlier. Lastly, February 20th through 22nd, the MSD Solutions Lab team will be in Louisville again for the annual NSC Future of EHS event, where we hope each of you will join us to learn more about the latest MSD innovations. Many of you have already begun strategic planning for the year ahead, and as we finish today's summit, I want to again encourage anyone that has not yet joined the Pledge community to make the MSD Pledge 2.0 a key component of your organization's 2024 safety roadmap. We are proud to continue our ongoing work together to transform workplace safety and look forward to seeing many of you again next year. And as always, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. As we end today's event, please take a moment before you close Zoom to fill out our 1-minute exit questionnaire. And to stay informed on all things MSD Solutions Lab, scan the QR code or email us at msdSolutionsLab@nsc.org. Thank you again for joining us, and as always, be safe.